Hey guys, it's Liz, and we're going to continue talking about Chapter 4 and discussing dominant and recessive alleles. A recessive allele is an allele that affects an individual's phenotype only when it's present on both chromosomes, and a dominant is when an allele can affect on one of the chromosomes. We're going to continue scrolling down, and this page discusses how you can crossbreed two different alleles, and one can be dominant or recessive, and how if you have a recessive gene in both of them, you can get a white pea plant. Then we're going to go on discussing the regulations of genes and how we're going to talk about how experience influences our genes by changing where, when, and how we use them. And we're going to talk about how individual cells decide which genes we use and how the environment can influence that decision. Different genes are used at different times in different cells. Gene expression is a process by which a cell directs a gene to make its protein. Just like lungs use their cells only in the lungs and brains use their cells only in the brain, gene expression is not an all-or-none process. This picture describes how neurons express only those genes needed for the neuron function, and same for the skin and liver cells. This paragraph discusses how DNA is used and how there's the long stretches of DNA, but the DNA provides the instructions for the protein, and there is DNA between genes, and genes are made up of DNA, so basically DNA just runs the entire thing. Oh, also fun fact, two blue-eyed people can have a brown-eyed child because there are various shades in the color of the eye, and sometimes those shades are not produced as well, or the certain protein only delivers a certain shade, so that you can have brown-eyed kids from two blue-eyed people. What a fun fact. Sensory experience and learning experience affect gene expression. Not only do genes affect brain function and behavior, but behaviors affect gene expression in the brain. Genes are very, very hard to understand and extensive, and they're not simple at all. The cells in your body are constantly changing, and particular genes are definitely being expressed at different times in different places. But it's important to know that experience affects gene expression. Epigenetics is the study of factors that affect gene expression. Genes and experience interact with each other. Epigenetics is important because experience and the environment affect certain factors of genes. And this research was done to discuss gene expression, and it was concluded that there are some behavioral differences, but that aren't genetic. So two rats that have the same genes acted differently because of their environment. Gene-environment interaction is the effect of the environment on a gene expression. And this was just another experiment discussing how certain rats, how they are affected in mazes based on their genes and environment in certain conditions. So now we're going to move on to section 4.3 and how single gene effects on behavior. There are behavioral differences among individuals, and that is determined by the differences in the genes they carry. And there are two cases for that. There's destructive processes and sensory defects. Genes that severely disrupt brain function have a strong, direct, and disastrous effect on behavior. Sometimes a certain allele can cause an abnormal protein to be made that actually does damage to us instead of doing its job. And one of the famous cases of this is Huntington's disease. And Huntington's disease is a progressive genetic disorder characterized by abrupt, involuntary movements and profound changes in mental functioning. Basically, people that are born with Huntington's disease or the Huntington gene produce no symptoms early in life, but then as they age, the disease like carries on, and it's a dominant trait. So the person will have abnormal involuntary movements and disordered thinking, and eventually will die. As depressing as that sounds, we're going to end here today. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.